Bundle up and ready your ice axes as we delve into these astonishing frozen finds. Let's begin with number 15, an entire mountain range. In 1958, a Soviet expedition uncovered an entire mountain range. Buried under 600 meters of ice in Antarctica, the Gamburtsev mountain range is absolutely massive. It extends for about 1,250 kilometers and has peaks as high as 3,390 meters in altitude. This makes the mountain range about as large as the European Alps. Yet despite its size, its hard-to-reach location under ice means that scientists know pretty much nothing about its features. Number 14. Gold. While most gold is located underground, melting glaciers have revealed new deposits. During the last ice age, glaciers often transported gold-bearing rocks. Some of those golden rocks have become frozen inside the glaciers. And while the gold is usually scattered throughout as sediment, they've begun to reveal significant quantities. While it took an entire decade to excavate the fossil thanks to the ground frost and the harsh weather, they uncovered a new species that's now called Antarctopelta, or Antarctic shield in English. To date, this one fossil is the only specimen of this species that's ever been found. Number 12. Yucca the mammoth. In 2010, a group of Siberian tusk hunters came across one of the world's most incredible Ice Age relics. Known as Yucca, she was a woolly mammoth that roamed the icy tundra about 39,000 years ago. She likely met her end after falling into a swamp and getting stuck, and it's due to this unique position that her lowered body was almost perfectly preserved. In fact, it's in such good condition that scientists were able to extract flowing blood. As it turns out, that mammoth blood has a natural antifreeze. Yucca is now displayed in Moscow and would certainly be worth visiting on the next trip to the city. Number 11. A box of jewels. In 2013, a French alpinist landed, leading to the alpinist going home with a cool $340,000. Number 10. Grasshoppers. So, while grasshoppers and glaciers are two things that don't seem very compatible, you can get two of them in one in the U.S. state of Montana. Located within the Beartooth Mountains of Custer National Forest, the so-called Grasshopper Glacier is far different than the typical white glaciers. That's because it's got a grayish color, and this is because it has tens of millions of locusts located inside of it. Now, I'm not entirely sure how they got in there, but there are a couple of theories. The most popular is that centuries ago, a swarm of billions of them were migrating over the Rocky Mountains when they suddenly were trapped by a massive winter storm. The ice then froze some of the trapped specimens in time, creating the incredible sight that's there today. Now, Grasshopper Glacier, as it came to be known, caught the attention of scientists after being discovered in the early 1900s by geologist J.P. Kimball. When he sent samples of the insect species to the U.S. Bureau of Temperatures have caused many similar glaciers to melt. So, if you want to see Grasshopper Glacier for yourself, I'd suggest making the trip sooner rather than later. Now, getting there is quite the trek. After all, you have to use an off-road vehicle for part of the way, and then trek for several hours, with this often being in the face of bad weather. And it is because of this that the glacier is only considered to be accessible from late July to September, making it a difficult, yet worthwhile site to visit. Number 9. Allen Hills 84001. While the meteorite that wiped out the dinosaurs may be the most famous space rock, Allen Hills 84001 is a close second. Discovered in the Allen Hills icefield of Antarctica in 1984, the 1.9-kilogram igneous rock is thought to have crystallized from magma on Mars about 4.5 billion years ago, and later to have been shocked and altered, perhaps by one or more nearby meteoroid or asteroid impacts, into what it is today. By our estimates, it was formed as part of the crust on Mars about 4 billion microorganisms. After all, the carbonate grains that were observed are associated with organic compounds and contain minute crystals of iron minerals similar in size and shape to those produced by bacteria. If this hypothesis was true, this would mean that, in all likelihood, there was life on Mars. Given we haven't found definitive proof of that so far, this would have been, to put it lightly, a big deal. However, in subsequent investigations, other scientists refuted these claims. They instead said the carbonate grains could be explained by non-biological process. In 2022, these naysayers were proven right, as an authoritative report in the Journal of Science confirmed that the carbonate grains were not signs of life. Instead, they were created by water. Now, this shouldn't dash your hopes yet. After all, there is still good science that suggests that Mars may have once been hospitable to life. However, given the planet's current state, the chance of any life being found on Mars today is slim to none. And while this makes this piece of space rock a lot less exciting, it can still. He'd found a mummified baby buffalo. Mudry began inspecting the creature. However, he was in for a shock after he realized that the animal had a trunk. Upon showing his boss, all work was stopped and the experts were called in. While Grant Zazula, the Yukon government's paleontologist, wasn't able to arrive right away, he sent 2 geologists who rushed to the creek, surveyed the site, and retrieved the remains less than an hour before a storm struck. Once secure, the mammoth was wrapped in a tarp and brought to a nearby location for a ceremony with scientists, miners, politicians, and First Nations elders. Gathered in a circle, the elders offered a blessing and named the mammoth Nunchoga, which means big baby animal in their language. After a quick examination, they ruled that Nunchoga was female, who was probably about a month old when she passed away more than 30,000 years ago. Based on where she was found, it's more than likely that she was grazing with her mother when she strayed from her mother's side and got stuck in the mud, leading to her death. Now, the reason why Nunchoga was so well preserved is likely due to her now holds the title of being the first complete baby woolly mammoth found in North America, and only the second in the world. As such, her discovery was an incredible stroke of luck and of great importance to the scientific and archaeological community. Moving on to number 7, an AC-53 Skytrooper Dakota. On November 18th of 1946, a C-53 Skytrooper Dakota took off from Tulln Air Base near Vienna, Austria, bound for Pisa in northern Italy. The plane was carrying several high-ranking Allied officers and their families, and so in order to play it safe, Captain Ralph Tate Jr. decided to take a 2-day-long route that would take them through Munich and Marseille in order to avoid bad weather. This ended up being an ill-advised plan. That's because somewhere around Innsbruck, the plane got caught in bad weather anyways, causing the pilots to become disoriented and go off course. They knew they were in the Alps because Tate had to dodge several mountain peaks. However, they mistakenly thought they were in the French. 12 of them were now stuck about 3,200 meters up in the Alps in late November. Thankfully though, despite the rough landing, the radio still worked. However, because the radio signals deflected off the mountains, the B-17 bombers sent to look for them didn't pick them up. It was because of this that it took a grand total of 3 days for the US and British Air Forces to locate the lost plane, with the eventual finder being, according to some sources, none other than the captain's dad, who spotted the plane after he sent up a flare. With the help of local Swiss Alpine soldiers, all the passengers who were aboard were saved, giving this story a happy ending. So this leaves us with the obvious question: what happened to the plane? Well, after the incident, the plane was simply left on the glacier and mostly forgotten about. However, in 2012, 3 university students from Canada found the C-53's propeller while hiking the glacier. They first thought it was a log protruding from the ice, but after investigating realized that it was a plane propeller. This find soon grabbed local headlines. They soon determined that it was a polynia. In essence, a polynia forms because the deep water in that part of the Southern Ocean is warmer and saltier than the surface water. Ocean currents can at times bring the warmer water upwards, where it melts the blankets of ice that had formed on the ocean's surface. That melting created the polynia. To make matters worse, since the water in the hole is continuously exposed to the atmosphere above, it makes it difficult for new ice layers to form. While we know how polynias work, there's still a lot of mystery surrounding them. First and foremost, they tend to occur on the coast where ice is close to non-frozen seawater. However, in this case, the polynia opened up very deep in the interior of the continent, puzzling scientists. We still have little idea of what long-term impacts of a polynia are, and whether they can cause serious harm to the local environment. There are even suggestions that they may be linked to climate change, although this is yet to be definitively proven. Using data from satellites, autonomous floats, and tagged marine animals, all things skis. And in 2014, a team of scientists found a single archaic ski in Norway's national park. 7 years later, a matching ski was found just a few meters away and in even better condition than its counterpart. Now, it's worth mentioning that skis have a rather long history. The archaeological record suggests that hunters in Europe and Asia began using skis to chase game around the end of the last ice age, about 11,000 years ago. To date, the oldest confirmed ski, which was unearthed in Russia, is about 8,000 years old, and periodically archaeologists in Scandinavia have found wooden skis and ski-like artifacts to date as early as 3200 BC. Now, the skis in question are no older than what we found before. In fact, they're believed to be a relatively young set at just 1,300 years old. What makes them stand out and earn a spot on this list is the condition. Measuring in at about 188 centimeters long and about 18 centimeters wide, the skis are sizable, and according to the measurement, the second ski is slightly larger than the first. According to Arner, was a hunter, traveler, or both, and the find shows that despite being geographically remote, the high mountains of southern Norway were teeming with activity 1,300 years ago. It seems like this set of skis is also a bit different than what has typically been found. After the discovery of the first ski, the team wondered whether its underside had once been lined with fur. This would have been done, theoretically, to give the skis more grip. However, the new skis seem to have a furrow like those found on some other ancient and modern skis. This furrow would have no purpose if covered with fur, leading researchers to believe that the skis didn't feature any of it. Number 4. Ancient viruses. While it may sound crazy, it turns out that viruses can survive under ice for thousands of years. Now, it's practically impossible to know how many ancient viruses are frozen and how many have already been quietly unleashed. However, there are some that scientists have picked up on. It's worth noting that so far, scientists have only studied permafrost viruses that infect single-cell or take the immense risk of starting a new pandemic with unknown zombie viruses from the distant past just to demonstrate that we're right." End quote. So here's some of the so-called safe viruses that have been found so far. One is Pythovirus cyberisum. Considered to be one of the largest viruses ever found, this 1.5 millimeter long monstrosity is a thick-walled oval with an opening at one end, a cork structure as a cap, and a honeycomb-like grid. Now, this virus was discovered inside a core of an ancient Siberian permafrost in the Russian Far East, and it's believed to be about 30,000 years old. Malavirus cyberisum is a second virus that's quite similar to the first, found in the same 30,000-year-old Siberian permafrost sample. It's a slightly smaller one and protected by a hairy outer layer. What's interesting about this one is that if it infects an amoeba, it can produce and release 200 to 300 new viral particles for every single virus. While it also poses no danger to humans or other animals, of them will be dangerous. After all, there is a very real chance that the next COVID or SARS is hiding deep in that ice. If the ice melts, it could infect those in the north of our planet before heading south, catching most of the planet by surprise. As such, it's important that we constantly monitor new viruses in the Arctic to make sure that this terrifying possibility does not become a reality. Number 3. Glacier Girl. On July 15th of 1942, a squadron of 6 P-38 Lightning fighter planes and 2 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers got caught in a blizzard while flying from Greenland to the British Isles. As a result, they had no choice but to turn back and conduct an emergency landing on the glaciers of Greenland. While all of the crew members were rescued, 9 days later, the aircraft were left behind. For some reason or another, they were never retrieved over the course of the war, and instead they sat there for decades. Over this time period, the ever-shifting ice sheets buried the aircraft under 75 plane with blasts of hot water, allowing individual pieces to be resurfaced. Surprisingly, the plane was in decent condition. While the canopy was crushed by the ice, all parts were more or less in place. After a $500,000 repair effort, the plane was in workable condition, and in October of 2002, she embarked on her first flight. However, it was on June 22, 2007 that the Glacier Girl went on a rather ambitious flight. The plan was that she would depart from Teterboro Airport in New Jersey and attempt to fly across the Atlantic Ocean to Duxford in England, with the idea being she would complete the flight that she had begun 65 years earlier. However, on June 28th, a coolant leak in the right engine grounded the plane in Goose Bay, which is a town in northeastern Canada. In any case, the successful excavation of Glacier Girl made it seem like the second plane could be recovered, and in 2011 an effort began to do just that. With the help of ground-penetrating radar mounted onto drones, the team involved were able to detect one of the P-38s and determine that it was a plane known as Echoes. The story goes that 2 German tourists were hiking in the Ötztal Alps on the border of Austria and Italy when they came across a mummy. After being extracted, the mummy was examined at the University of Innsbruck, and rather incredibly, he was soon nicknamed Ötzi and determined to be the oldest natural mummy in Europe. After further examination, he was determined to have lived somewhere between 3350 and 3105 BC, making him more than 5,000 years old. While this should have led to decomposition, the extremely cold temperatures in the Alps preserved it incredibly well. The scientists involved were able to figure out that Ötzi was about 5'2", left-handed, wore a size 8 shoe, and had brown eyes, dark brown hair, and tan skin, suggesting that he was of Southern European heritage despite being located in the Alps. Unfortunately, he was in pretty bad shape physically, as he was lactose intolerant, had a rare genetic anomaly that prevented his 12th pair of ribs from forming, and he also suffered from cavities, intestinal parasites, and mentioning that while the remains were examined in Austria, both the remains and his paraphernalia are now located in Italy. The reasons for this have to do with geopolitics. You see, at the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye in 1919, the border between North Tyrol and Austria and South Tyrol and Italy was defined as the watershed of the rivers Inn and Etsch. However, the glacier Wotzi was found on had since retreated, complicating the decision as to whether to find the site was Italian or Austrian. In '91, land surveys were conducted, and while it was determined that while Otzi's find site drains to the Austrian side, the body was actually located 93 meters inside Italy. Thankfully, both sides agreed to be civil, while the Italians allowed Innsbruck University to finish the scientific examinations. From '98 onwards, Otzi has been on display in Italy's South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology. Number 1. The HMS Investigator. In 1848, Sir John Franklin officially disappeared. Between the two oceans could be far faster. After all, during this time period, the Panama Canal didn't exist yet, forcing ships to sail around the bottom of South America. Given the fact that this was rather dangerous, the hope was that a northwest passage would be far safer. The expedition of Sir John Franklin was one of the attempts made in order to find this seaway. In 1845, a 59-year-old Franklin and his crew embarked on the journey with their ships, known as the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. Right from the get-go, there were problems. After all, the food was improperly sealed, leading to much of it to get contaminated with lead. And while the crew managed to make it through the winter of 1845, in '46, the boats got stuck in the ice. While the ships had what should have been 3 years of provisions, the contamination made much of it inedible, and after 2 years with no news, Sir Franklin's wife asked the British Admiralty to conduct a search. All the searches didn't come up with much. Only written evidence to ever be found was the so-called Victory Point Note, written in 2 parts. In history, they have stories of how they would use the abandoned ship as a source of copper and iron. However, this apparently didn't last for long, and just after a year, the ship sank into the water, and from then on, it was unclear where the exact location was. However, in July of 2010, this all changed. That's because it was during this month that Parks Canada sent a team of scientists and surveyors to look for their ship. After breaking the ice on July 25th, the crew decided to test their underwater scanner, and in an incredible stroke of luck, the scanner happened to find a ship in the scanner's testing spot. The ship was neither the Erebus nor the Terror, rather it was the HMS Investigator. This was a ship that went to look for the Franklin expedition in 1853. However, after getting stuck in the ice, it subsequently sank to the bottom. In any case, thanks to the fortunate find on the first test run, the entire investigation only took a few minutes. And from there, the crew were able to spend a good amount of time taking pictures of the wreckage and assessing it. From then on, Parks Canada got emboldened. In 2014, they met as such. While America may periodically try to assert the Northwest Passage as being theirs due to the ownership of Alaska, the reality is that this is a weak argument at best, and disingenuous at worst. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope to see you next time.